Hello, this is U.S. Immigration Attorney Sharifa Tharpe. I'm here live to take your U.S. immigration related questions. Go ahead and put your questions in the comments now. So I want to give you some updates on what's going on in immigration. I know if you've been watching the news, you are seeing what's going on. They're currently in negotiations to pass immigration law that would change certain aspects of asylum as well as parole. So we're seeing in front of our eyes that they are going to be limiting certain aspects of immigration. This is mainly geared towards controlling the southern border. So that is the main preoccupation now for Congress as well as the president, is controlling and stemming the flow of immigrants who are coming across the border, particularly those who are coming across the border without permission. And so the best way that they see fit to keep people from bypassing immigration laws by crossing the border without permission is by limiting asylum, making it a lot harder to apply for asylum at the border. Which to me would not necessarily address the entry without permission, because the people who are seeking asylum at the border, they are doing it the right way. They're going to the border and they are claiming asylum at the border. So this would not stop anybody who is going to cross the border without permission in the first place. However, this is what they see fit to address, illegal entry into the country. So what they're going to do with asylum, what it's looking like now, is they are going to go ahead and say, if you come to the United States to claim asylum, they usually have a credible, fair interview to determine whether your claim to asylum is credible, and that you would, on a preliminary review, qualify for asylum, that it appears as if you will qualify. They will push you on to a final review by a judge or by an asylum officer. But upon coming to the United States, you are usually granted a credible, fair interview. They are saying that they're going to make it a lot harder by increasing the standard of proof that the asylee or the person claiming asylum can bring. So they're going to increase or toughen the standard to provide evidence of this fear of persecution in their country. So that's one. But the reason why that is a concerning change is because when somebody is running for their life, they're fleeing their country, the last thing they're going to do is think about all the pieces of evidence that they're going to gather to take with them to the border to make a case for asylum. Usually, they get to claim asylum and they get to go through a process to be able to see if that asylum application is going to be approved finally. However, in this case now, those who are running for their lives, who are running away from threats, from violence, from the killing of themselves and their family, they're now going to have to take the special step of gathering evidence, of making sure that they have everything to prove, which is never ideal. It's never going to be something that can be possible when you have to just go. You just have to run, sometimes leave everything behind to get to safety. The other change here is that they're requiring that if you're going to apply for asylum, you need to fly into the US and claim asylum by showing your entry by plane. So what that means is anybody coming to the border who is not on a plane coming in, is not going to be able to apply for asylum. That is also concerning because whenever you're dealing with asylum, that person is going to escape in every way possible that they are able to. They are going to travel by foot. They are going to travel by bus. Sometimes it's cheaper to do that. Sometimes a plane is not an option for someone who is fleeing from their country. So, but nevertheless, they're now saying that those are some of the restrictions that they're going to implement to cut the number of people who are coming into the country without permission. How is limiting asylum preventing people from crossing the border? That is going that you have to answer for me, because what I see here is that people are going to cross the border without permission anyway, and they're definitely going to not see useful to go through the regular process of claiming asylum at the border, because they're going to see that they probably will not succeed with the higher standard of evidence that they have to now adhere to, and also based on the fact that they may require them to fly in, and that's not going to be possible for a lot of immigrants. Um, so that's asylum. Now, the other is parole. So they would like, Congress is working towards limiting parole. Mean the parole now is whenever now they have parole programs in place. Parole is a discretionary program that's available to the federal government. They can go ahead and give immigrants permission to enter the country. It can be based on an urgent humanitarian need. It could be based on public interest. Based on those premises, they can allow an immigrant to enter the United States for a limited amount of time. They don't necessarily have to have a visa. So what has been happening is some immigrants are coming to the border and they are being granted parole for one reason or the other, that the officer who's doing the evaluation sees fit to give them parole. The other is that they do have parole programs where they have implemented these parole programs in other countries so people don't make the dangerous journey to the United States to try to get into the country. So they've implemented parole programs to help people in places like Cuba, Haiti, Venezuela, to come get permission outside of the country and then come to the border for entry once they're approved. What the Congress, mainly led by the Republicans, are saying is that they want to limit the federal government's ability to grant this parole. The parole has been a way that the government has offered in this time of where we do have a broken immigration system, where people are not recognized necessarily as human beings, but rather as numbers. The parole program has served as an alternative to excessive backlogs, to situations where an immigrant who normally would not be able to come to the United States for humanitarian reasons can then get special permission based on the discretion of the government, the federal government, to come into the US. That can be maybe based on humanitarian, based on family unity, or other types of good reasons for them to come to the United States. Well, they want to limit the discretionary authority of the federal government to allow individuals to come in on this basis. So what you're going to see is people who are coming to the border who are in desperate need of assistance are now no longer going to be able to come in. And the federal government will likely have limited power to use parole to get them in. So those right now, this is the focus of the immigration changes. They are mainly focused towards what's happening at the border. The other concerning change is expedited removal. So they want to expand expedited removal national. So if you've been listening to me before, you know that expedited removal is usually enforceable for immigrants who are within, I believe, 100 miles of the border, who have come in undocumented within the most recent 2 weeks. So that they have to, the CBP has authority to then exercise their power to speed up the deportation of someone and send them out of the country with expedited removal if they fall within this category. So that means expedited removal does not usually apply to immigrants who have been here for a long time, even if they're without status. However, they're looking to expand expedited removal to not just 100 miles of the border, but then to expand it nationally. Now, what does that mean exactly? We have to see what they're going to shell out, what kind of details are going to be associated with an expanded expedited removal. However, what concerns me is what kind of enforcement actions are we going to have with an expedited removal process that is now not just 100 miles of the border, but that can be in the middle of the country, that can be anywhere in the country. That means that you're going to have ICE and CBP officers that can then detain immigrants nationally. And that also makes me wonder, how do they plan to do this? Where do they plan to look for immigrants who are subject to expedited removal? We'll have to see what the details are, but that is also on the table. Another thing, though, to note here with the change, I'm going to go backwards, is with the border. Another concerning thing here is that without the parole authority, that means people that come to the border for help, for assistance, they will now be subjected to detainment, because the government is going to have less of an ability to use their parole authority to then release someone while maybe their process is pending, or to release them for a good reason. So, previously, for example, they've been very much considerate of families, and they've been, especially since the melee under the Trump administration with separation of families, they've been very aware of and been very considerate of families, making sure that they're releasing families, as well as pregnant women and individuals who are facing certain health issues. However, with the limitation on their parole authority, this will no longer be the case. So no matter what your circumstance is, we're going to see a lot of immigrants being detained at the border. If they want to claim asylum, they may have to be detained for the entire time that they're waiting for their asylum hearing to come through, or for, or whatever process they're going through, they're going to be detained for that time. So, we're seeing these changes, and you'll hear me say it over and over again, that I think the best thing we can take from this is that changes can come hard and fast, and you need to make sure that you are looking into your rights, your options going forward. Right now, I'm not hearing anything about immigrants who have been here for a long time being compromised or in danger of, deportation. I'm not hearing any changes in the law regarding immigrants who have been here for a long time, even if you don't have your papers. But what this shows is how controversial this is becoming, how fast we can see changes happen, and changes to the disadvantage of certain populations. So you want to make sure that you're on top of your options. Now, should we experience changes in the future? There's a lot of talk about Trump possibly being reelected. while it's hard to believe that will be the case, it's always a possibility that you have to be thinking about. And a lot of people are asking, what do you do in a case like this? So I would say, don't wait and see. Check out what your options are now. And even if he does become elected, another thing I would say is, I am not telling you to go hide in the shadows again. If you qualify for immigration relief, you should always move forward with it. Always protect yourself by getting legal status first. Don't go hiding. And because that, I think that's also dangerous, is if you go hiding and you don't explore your legal rights and options, then you are at a loss. So this is not telling you to go hide and not figure out your options, even after, um, if he's reelected, even after he's reelected, if because I'm praying that's not the case. But always seek to pursue your legal options, because you're going to be in a better position to stay here and pursue those options. Another lesson to take from this, and one of the takeaways here, is that individuals are not being deported right now just because you're here without your papers. The deportation process is mainly for individuals who don't have any legal options to be here. They have no legal basis to be here. I've heard this repeatedly from the federal government, that this is the group of individuals that they are focusing on, individuals who have no legal basis to be here. Now, that doesn't mean they're hunting down people who have no legal basis to be here, but if you end up in a situation where you end up detained or in custody, and you have no legal basis to be here, that is where removal will follow. Once you do qualify, and you take the steps to apply for the relief that you're supposed to get, then it means that you're protected. So start by making sure you're evaluating your options to go forward. All right, so let me answer some questions here. I'm going to go through quickly, answer some questions. Thanks so much for the love. Now, if you do want to go ahead and schedule time to talk with me about your options, and I do assist clients with all the options on the table for them. So even if you're here and you're currently here without your papers, I definitely have a list of options that I look at to assist you to fix that situation. So give me a call, schedule your appointment so we can do that detailed evaluation. Yesterday, I was speaking to someone in a consultation, and by the time we were finished, she thought she had no options. By the time we were finished, she had a very strong option. And she commented that in never has she ever been in an appointment where another attorney has brought these types of options to her. They've always told her to go find a spouse, to go marry, because that's the only way. But I do not do those in my consultations. I don't tell people to go find spouses. I evaluate real alternative options. If you are here, you're here without your papers and you're trying to figure out your options. So this is where it's important to schedule that appointment. Give it a try, and let's see what options we can find for you. Now go to the link in the profile. You'll see everything there you need to schedule your own appointment. You can give us a call by clicking on the website. Click on the website, you'll see the number. You can sign up to provide your information. So many different ways to get in touch with us. Just click on the link in the profile. Click on the link in the description of the video on YouTube, on Twitch, on Facebook, and you'll have all the options there. There's also the number going across the screen, so you can always call that number and get started with us. All right, so questions, finally. Let's go ahead and So, what if a person came to the border to get parole before they married to someone if they found love? So, going to the border, and there's no sure thing that you're going to get to the border and get parole. You really do have to have a good reason to get parole, for them to parole you, and for you to come through the border in that manner. Now, if you are granted parole, say you do come, you're seeking assistance and relief here because of humanitarian reasons, and then you are granted parole, and you're granted the right type of parole, then you happen to get married afterwards. Once you have the right type of parole, because there are different types of parole, but once you have the right type of parole, then you are able to adjust status. But then, it can get complex, because what are the circumstances involved? Were you granted parole? It's called conditional parole while your removal proceedings are going forward. If so, then that is not the type of parole that qualifies you to adjust status here through marriage. Also, what if you got parole, but then you got moved into removal proceedings afterwards? Then it does become complex, because if you marry someone while you're in proceedings, you have to meet a much higher burden of proof to get that adjustment of status here. So it's going to depend on a lot of different factors. I'm on filing and my wife abandoned me. It's only the affidavit of support left. What must I do? So this is where you need to consult me or another immigration attorney. Now you can, if your spouse is not cooperating with you, you should not be representing information to the immigration service as if things are still going good, because that can later on come to really affect your application, especially if you get a 2-year green card and you're going to the 10-year green card, and you have to explain how is it that you were separated from your spouse before you even got the first green card, because they'll take that as possible fraud. So you want to make sure, if your spouse abandoned you and in the process they're subjecting you to extreme cruelty, then you should be switching to another process called VAWA. And with that VAWA process, you're able to continue your green card process all on your own without the risk of the officer implying or accusing you of committing any kind of fraud to get the green card. So get legal advice. That's what I'm getting at. For someone who is on F1 status but approved for asylum with F1 visa ending May 2024, what steps should be taken to adjust status for the green card? So as long as you do have asylum, you can adjust status as long as you meet the physical presence requirement within a year of having the asylum. You can then adjust status to permanent residence. You don't have to wait for the F1. As a matter of fact, now you're an asylee, you can use that basis to apply for adjustment of status. Good afternoon. Can do the medical and send in everything one time when starting the process for the green card? Yes, actually, it's encouraged to send in the medical along with everything else, because that avoids delays, avoids a request for evidence, where they can just make a decision if they choose to waive the interview. I filed for asylum and waiting about 2 years now. What do you recommend? And it's probably going to be another 5 or 6 years. So you have people that are waiting for up to 8 years to get through their asylum process. So you may have quite a wait. I'm looking forward to hearing from you. Does the petitioner need to provide a job letter from the employer when submitting documents? It depends. So the job letter is usually required with the affidavit, not required, but it's one of the evidence that you can show along with the affidavit of support when showing income. Of course, that job letter isn't going to just be the employer has the employee works for me, but it's going to be a lot more detailed, like when did they start, they're currently working, what's their salary, what's their compensation, what's their position at the employer. If you get a green card through marriage, how long does it take for the kids abroad to join? So if you get the green card through marriage to a U.S. citizen, the kids process is independent of that. So it's going to depend on when did the spouse file for the children. What if you're in removal processing, but you already married 4 years back in your home country? So schedule an appointment. If you did not get married during the removal proceedings, then you're not gonna be subject to the higher burden of proof. However, you still have to evaluate whether adjustment of status within before the immigration judge is going to work here. Of course, that's going to work as long as all the conditions are right and you do qualify to do adjustment of status before the judge. Was approved I-130. Can you help with a readjustment of statuses and waiver 212H? Absolutely. That's what we do too. So the waiver 212H is based on a waiver of inadmissibility, and we do those as well. We do those, we do waivers on a routine basis for our clients who are here adjusting status and they need forgiveness for past violations. Can I file for myself here in the US? It's going to depend. I mean, I do represent clients who file for themselves, but it's going to depend on whether you qualify. The first two that come to mind right off the bat would be VAWA, if you're being mistreated by certain US citizen or permanent resident relatives, or through the national interest waiver, and then also extraordinary ability as well, if you have extraordinary ability. How does a previous DUI charge affect a VAWA case? There was no accident involved and it happened 2 years ago. This person was just placed in removal proceedings as well. So this is definitely a complex situation. Why were they moved into removal proceedings? Um, and what was the final disposition of the court on the DUI charge? Were there a previous DUI charge before the DUI charge? So we have to figure out all of that that's going on here. If someone comes to the state on a fiance visa and they didn't get married, because for whatever reason, can the individual file for abandonment? So great question. So no, they can't file. As a fiance, you can't file a VAWA. If you came here, you got married. So you said they didn't get married, but then I would like to hear more because there may be other options. For example, I've seen the nightmare scenarios where the person comes on a fiance visa and they end up in an abusive situation where the U.S. citizen uses them, makes them work in the house, forces them to do things that they don't want to do, and that could possibly qualify them for T status. If my lawyer later update my I-360, I-485 information, no problem. So you know have that conversation with your attorney. Please, what is your immigration status if you're undocumented and marry a green card holder? So there's no immigration status here. How does someone release on own recognizance from ICE apply for work permit? Um, the DO told him he should do so, but he doesn't know what category he falls in. So usually with the work authorization, you have to qualify in some way. And so we would have to determine on what basis were you released. Now, being released on your own just being released by ICE on based on their own discretion is not in and of itself going to get you work authorization. However, if you're paroled, that could be one way. We'd have to see. And then also, if you independently qualify in other ways, like if you applied for asylum, then that also qualifies. How long after approval of work authorization we get interview notice? So it's hard to say about that. My friend has a VAWA application pending for herself and daughter. Can the daughter's father, who is a U.S. citizen, apply for her? Yes, so if the daughter is under 21, the U.S. citizen father could apply for her. Um, Good afternoon. Asylum pending since 2016, though work permit is available, but some places I would want to work, but couldn't simply because I'm not a citizen. What can you do? So at this point, unless you're outside of processing times or you have a really good reason to possibly sue, there's really nothing you can do but either request an expedite or explore the options for a mandamus if it's really taking longer than it should. How do you find out your case without calling? So there are case trackers that you can download. You can go to the USCIS website and put in your receipt number, and it will be able to give you the updates there. So my I-130, I-131 is approved, sent my RFE medical. What should I expect? So you may just get the green card in the mail. I just became a citizen. My mom is Salvadorian. How can I help her? She's been here 38 years. So if you are now a US citizen and you are over 21 and your mom came, now if your mom came across the border without inspection, it's going to be a different process here. But if your mom somehow came in with permission, came in with a visa or got paroled into the country, then you can apply for her to get her green card as long as you are a U.S. citizen who is age 21 or older. Now, if your mom that came across the border without permission, then we'd have to explore whether an unlawful presence waiver could assist her in this process. But to qualify for this, she would either have to still have a citizen or resident, spouse or parent herself. So the child does not count for purposes of this waiver. So this is where it's very important to schedule an appointment. Let's talk. Can you help a person who came on an F1? So I can help all sorts of immigrants, but I first have to make sure you qualify, and that's going to be in the consultation. My mom have been waiting for I-601 since 2021 in El Salvador. Why so long? I know they even have a lawsuit that's pending to try to push this along, push the processing times to be shorter. So we have to see if that's going to help here, but it is taking unbelievably long. Um, what kind of change is coming? So I spent the first part of the live talking about it. Changes to parole program, changes to asylum to make it harder to get asylum. And they are also going to push expedited removal to be expanded nationally. And along with that comes, stronger enforcement actions by ICE and CBP officers to then seek out immigrants who have recently crossed the border, usually without permission. My green card got approved on the 12th this month, have not yet received anything. How long can it take? About a week to 2 weeks. So call them, make sure they have your address, make sure everything is good for that. We applied for I-130 and I-485 last year, and while waiting, his EAD expired. Can we apply for? Yes, you can continue to apply to renew the EAD. And if you apply for it before it expires, you can get an automatic extension on your, an automatic 6-month extension on your employment authorization. So you want to make sure you apply for your work permit early, before it expires, preferably 6 months before it expires. Do I need to renew my green card after being here for 10 years, even if it's expired? Yes, it's a good idea to do that because you are required to show that you have evidence of your status. I have had clients that they just went straight into applying for their citizenship, and it turned out fine too. All right, that's gonna be it from me, everyone. So thank you everyone for your time. I'll be back tomorrow at around lunchtime to answer some more questions. If I didn't get to your questions, just go ahead and save your questions for tomorrow, where I can address those. So thanks again for your time, and I'll go ahead and continue to give you updates on what is happening. All right, thanks so much, and remember, just start to look at your options. That's the best way to approach this right now. Is always look at what your legal options are. Don't just go hiding. Don't assume you don't qualify for anything. um, Go ahead and get that legal advice that you need. And I do detailed consultations, where we can really evaluate alternative options, not just the usual. Are you married to a citizen? If you're not, then you can't qualify. I don't do that. All right. Have a good one. Good night. Well, good evening, and I'll see you tomorrow.